to Introducing Your Friends as Cuss Words, a lesson in unconventional networking. This is my first time speaking at Play-by-Play, as well as my first time in New Zealand, which is, thank you. Your country is gorgeous, and it's super exciting, and I'm really happy to be here. So, my name is Noni Och, and I hail from Sydney, Australia. I work as an associate producer at a company called Third Sense. Third Sense is a development company, and we specialize in what people call serious games. Basically, we make apps, websites, and games, mostly relating to health and education. Previously, I've worked as a camp counselor at Girls Make Games, as well as a QA tester on Robot House's award-winning title, Rumu. Now, every job I've had in the industry so far, I got in large part because of networking. I want to preface this talk by saying this is based on my own experiences, and it's not necessarily a step-by-step manual, but more of a general guide to networking. Because I believe networking is a vital skill in this industry. It's an answer that I hear almost constantly when people ask, well, how do I get into the games industry? Build your network with the right people, go to these events and network. And it's something told to students, especially studying game development, or at least it was told to me in my class during my game design course. But what the hell does networking mean? What does it look like in the games industry? And to really set the scene for this question, I want to take you back to Melbourne International Games Week 2018, particularly on the Saturday, the 27th of October, second day of PAX Australia. Now, I spent a lot of time at PAX working on an exhibition booth, and I'd met a bunch of really nice girls who were also working on the booth, and I made a lot of good friends with them. Now, after a shift, me and one of these girls, Steph, we decided we would walk through the show floor as we hadn't really seen much of PAX yet. Now, she had previously mentioned being a fan of this particular indie game, and I knew some of the team who worked on that game, and I told her that I could introduce her if she wanted to. And as such, as we were walking on the show floor, I saw one of them, and I turned to Steph and I said, oh, I can introduce you now if you want. And she said, yes, of course. And I'm thinking, look at me go, I'm introducing a friend, I'm helping them network. So I say hello, and I turn to Steph and I say, and this is my friend, and I completely blanked on her name. It just vanished from my brain, and like we'd only met the day before, but I'd walked over with such confidence, like, yeah, I'm going to introduce you to this developer, and then I forgot her name. So as I stumbled to remember her name, I went, and this is my friend, shit. And it completely sounded as though I'd just introduced her as shit. And like, it was a bit awkward at the time, but kind of hilarious. Steph has never let me live it down. It is still her nickname in the group chat. But in a weird way, that was kind of networking. I also went to the dictionary, and it defines networking as the action or process of interacting with others to exchange information and develop professional or social contacts. Essentially, meeting and communicating with someone to build a relationship, which, hey, is exactly what I did with Steph, huh? But there are two particular words I want to highlight in that sentence, professional and social. The dictionary separates these two types, and generally so do most people. However, I think particularly in the games industry, there can actually be quite a lot of overlap. While this isn't a bad thing, it can make it sometimes difficult to navigate boundaries. So what are the differences between professional and social contacts? Professional contacts are the kinds of people who you probably only see at conferences or networking events. If you want to get in contact, it's likely going to be through email or LinkedIn. I'm just kidding, no one uses LinkedIn except recruiters. These are the kind of contacts who you can ask for career advice, feedback on a resume, put you in touch with another contact, that kind of thing. Stuff that's predominantly work-related or business-related. Social contacts are someone who you will see at conferences as well as outside of those spaces for catch-ups and hangs. You'd likely message them through Facebook or a casual text. And these are the kind of contacts you can probably talk to about anything. It might still be games related, but it's less the kind of business end of things. While I was writing this, I reached out to some friends about what they would consider a good rule of thumb when navigating between professional and social contacts. A really good one was simply whether or not you would message them on Facebook or even add them as a friend to begin with. One of my favorites was, would you send this person a meme? Kind of silly, but it works, especially considering that memes have the possibility to be misunderstood, so you really have to know your audience. And as I mentioned, in the games industry, there can be quite a lot of overlap. Think about the context you have. Do you easily know which is which and where the line is drawn? You can have people who will be a reference for you for a job, also, but will happily catch over with drinks or a coffee or something. Or maybe people you've worked with for a while, who you can bond with outside of the studio. This can be great as it allows for more flexibility and depth in relationships, but it can also be difficult sometimes to navigate those boundaries between personal and professional. And I'm talking about this because it ties into the question of why do we network? Primarily when we talk about networking, it is as a means to get a job. When I started in the games industry, the idea of making friends just to advance my career troubled me greatly, and it seriously stressed me out. When people advised me to network, it was either implicitly or explicitly said that this was for the sole purpose of making the right connections to get a job and advance my career. And to me, that felt ingenuine and false. And to be honest, it completely turned me off the idea of networking. And I know I'm not the only one who feels this way. There are many people who don't like networking events because they think it feels too schmoozy or it feels fake, so they don't do it. So how many connections are we missing out because of this? But I decided that when I went to events, conferences, drinks, or whatever it may be, I would do so with the intention of making friends. Not thinking about how much a person could be a resource to me, which I think is really a problem of capitalism, but that's another whole talk, but to focus at the core of making friends. And I think that's a good foundation for building a network. I also realized that position carries a certain amount of privilege. When I started in the games industry, I was still living at home with my parents. I had worked as a casual job as a receptionist, and my livelihood wasn't dependent on me getting a job straight away. So it's definitely not a one-size-fits-all situation, but I think if you can, it can be a really good way to start. Because to survive in this industry, you don't just need connections and to know the right people. You need a support network. And I don't think this is something that's considered a lot in conversations surrounding networking. This industry can be hard. Not just that it's hard to break into, but it can be tough on people. More so if you're a woman, a person of color, trans, or queer. This industry is not always kind to us, and it is vital to have people who are in your corner supporting you, people who understand as well how the industry functions. Because there have been moments in my time here that I've wanted to leave, whether it's because of not getting that job or dealing with online harassment or dealing with abusers holding positions of power. And if I didn't have people batting in my corner, people who loved me and supported me, I might have left. In my experience, social contacts usually should come first and professional contacts after. Because once you establish yourself as a good friend, you build a reputation as a good person, and it can be easier to meet professional contacts afterwards. It allows you and your friends to set those boundaries between personal and professional, because people are different and they will have different boundaries and expectations. And it can help manage that feeling of being ingenuine or false when connecting with people. Once you're friends with someone, you likely know what they're comfortable with and what they're not comfortable with. And as your friends, they'll know what your goals are and they'll want to help you achieve them. And you can be that person for them too. Moving forward, I've talked about what networking is and why we network. So how do you network? Especially if you're someone who's quite introverted or can be quite shy, or perhaps you suffer from something like social anxiety. Being nervous to meet new people is very common. When I went to my first industry event, GCAP, I was terrified. I'd gone to a couple of monthly meetups back in Sydney at a pub where I stood in a corner with a drink and did not say hello to anyone. But GCAP was the first time I was at a more official event with a lot more people. I have social anxiety, and back then the idea of going up to anyone and saying hello was more terrifying than anything, let alone if they came up to me. And now I'm doing a solo talk at a conference, so I've come a long way. Thank you. Thank you. So there were a few things that helped me come out of my shell. Number one, focus on making friends. Like I said earlier, by focusing on the idea of making friends, not people who could just help me get a job, it removed an amount of pressure that I was putting on myself. It's much less stressful to think of it in social terms rather than I need to make connections or I'll never have a career. Number 2, buddy up. Having a friend or buddy who's also kind of new to the industry helped a ton. At that first GCAP, I had a friend who was also from my class, and we kind of went up to people together and we met them, and that alleviated a lot of the pressure that I was putting on myself. Meeting people with friends, especially if that friend is a lot more confident than you are, it can really lighten the stress and attention that you might feel is being placed on you. And 3, fake it until you make it. I'd never put much stock in this idea before, but trying it out that week was actually helped me build up a lot of confidence. People generally aren't overanalyzing everything that you do. If you seem confident, they will assume you are confident. And when people assume you are confident, you will feel more confident. It's kind of like a self-fulfilling prophecy. I can guarantee you've probably met someone who seemed a lot more confident and they were terrified inside. It was probably me. I will also add, if you do suffer from anxiety or a related issue, try not to be too hard on yourself when it comes to this kind of thing. You're essentially operating on a higher difficulty level than others. And one app in particular that I will plug, because it helps me at events, especially like this, is called Clear Fear. Basically, it's like this cute little app that can help you with breathing exercises, mindfulness, and stuff like that. And it offers a bunch of resources to help manage different situations. At the end of this talk, I will plug a bunch of links if you're interested, so yeah. So, how do you network? There are many ways to do it, considering my evidence by my introduction as shit friend story. Here is a simple guideline. First, assess the situation. Are you at a place where networking is appropriate? Are you at a designated networking event, a conference, or a meetup? Does this person look like they have the spoons to meet people? Now, you can't always tell, but if someone looks obviously upset, angry, or they're on the phone, or otherwise looks busy, probably not the best time to come up to them and introduce yourself. If it's a few people talking, ask if they mind you joining before you kind of shuffle over. Don't awkwardly join a group of strangers without saying a word. Trust me, it just makes it awkward for everyone. I've done it. You could, and just like, hey, do you mind if I join you? It's that simple. You could also meet someone while you're standing in line for a talk, or if they're near you during a snack break. Just try and read the room before you dive on in. As for the actual talking bit, a simple greeting is a good way to start. You can give a handshake if you're comfortable, or maybe a little wave. Whatever you feel comfortable with, as long as it's cool with the other person. Do not just go in for a hug straight away. Say your name and a personal link of sorts. Maybe you've seen them on Twitter before, or they made a game you played, or they gave a talk you enjoyed, or perhaps you know of a mutual friend between you. Or if you've never seen this person before and you're just trying to meet new people, just say that. Usually they'll respond in kind with their name and a link, either replying directly to yours, or they might be familiar with you in some way. Trust me, the first time someone says, oh, hey, I know you from Twitter, or, oh, you're the girl that yelled at that sexist idiot in the IGDA group, can be a bit of a shock. So, Harvard Business Review posted an article called Learning to Love Networking, and it's a great resource, and I'll also plug it at the end. But something it said was when your networking is driven by shared interests, it will feel more authentic. It's good to identify common interests and goals. This could be related to the personal link, but it doesn't have to be, nor does it have to be games related. Maybe they're wearing something that you recognize, like a Game of Thrones t-shirt or something. That's popular right now, right? Or you were both in the same talk and you can share ideas. Small talk can be terrifying, but once you kind of find some common ground, it can be a lot easier. Ask about their background in games, what they do outside of work for fun, stuff like that. It's said that people love talking about themselves, so once you get that ball rolling, you should be set. When it comes to the professional element, we like to think of it as a give and take situation. You scratch my back, I'll scratch yours. We think of these intangible resources like money, connections, information. but sometimes people feel as that they don't have anything of that sort to give, whether it's because they're entry level or junior, or maybe they're a minority. This leads to people pulling away from networking altogether because they feel like they're not offering anything. Oops, I forgot one. They're not offering anything to the table, so they feel like their time it's not worth to take away someone else's time to make that connection. Or maybe because that feeling of using people for those resources doesn't sit well with them. But I believe we should think more broadly about the things we can bring to the table. You might not have money or connections, but there are other things you can give, such as gratitude, insight, recognition. You might have an area of knowledge that the other person can benefit from, or you're more up to date with societal trends and new technologies. And it can also come back to that idea of shared interests, where you find that common ground and you build up. Networking doesn't also necessarily have to be in person. Joining Facebook groups or meeting people on Twitter is perfectly valid, and it can be a great way to start if you're feeling a bit shy going to events. At the beginning of my talk, I mentioned I worked at Girls Make Games as a camp counselor. And I got that job essentially because I was in a game dev group with one of the founders. And a few years ago, she needed volunteers for their PAX booth. And I put my hand up and I helped out. And later, when that position came up for a camp counselor, she encouraged me to apply, and I got it. Meeting people online and then later at events can be a great way to make it easier for you to go to those events eventually. If you know people you know will be there, it can make it feel less daunting. Joining your local IGDA group on Facebook can be a great way to start. I want to finish up by giving some general do's and don'ts to remember. Some of these might seem like common sense, but you'd be surprised, and they're worth repeating anyway. So be yourself. Be genuine, because it will quickly become obvious if you're trying to be someone else. In the words of Oscar Wilde, be yourself, everybody else is already taken. Be kind and polite. Use your manners and respect other people's personal space. Make an effort to use someone's correct pronouns. Take time to listen. This can all make the difference. Have something they can remember you by. Even something like being accidentally introduced as shit can help. So later on at a party, Steph actually ran into that developer again, and he said, "Oh, hey, I remember you. You're the one Noni introduced as shit." So it worked. I personally like to wear a flower crown, as it does make something that makes me stand out a little bit. But also, simply leaving a good impression can be all it takes. And lastly, take care of yourself. Events like these can be stressful, and it's easy to burn yourself out, especially if you're introverted and social events take up a lot of your energy. Make sure you're taking care of you first. And now for the don'ts. Don't make assumptions, whether it's a person's gender, their involvement in games, their level of experience. It may sound like common sense, but I can't count the amount of times that someone has made the silly assumption that I don't play video games while I'm at a games conference. Or that I'm here supporting my boyfriend or my husband, because, yeah, I paid all these money to go to an event just for him. Just don't do it. Don't hand out your business cards straight away. Students especially fall prone to this, where they meet someone and they've barely exchanged a few sentences, and they just shove the business card straight out. It's happened to me, where I've barely said hello to this person, I don't even know their name, and I'm suddenly getting a business card and they're gone. It's impolite, it's ingenuine, and your business card will likely just be thrown away. Don't go for a hug without asking first, even if you know this person a bit or you've seen them hug other people. It's a mistake even I've made in the past. An easy thing to ask is, are you a hugs person? I think Play by Play has these really cute stickers, which is really nice. That's a really quick way to find out if someone's comfortable with hugs or not, but still, it's nice to ask. Don't be upset if they decline, it's probably nothing personal. And finally, don't be afraid to make mistakes. It's probably gonna happen. Whether you introduce a friend as shit, or you stumble, or you get really nervous, it's fine. Learn from them, grow from them, and be better. Before I wrap up, I am gonna plug a bunch of links on the screen. The first link is the Harvard Business Review article called Learning to Love Networking. I think it's a great resource to start off. Next is the anxiety management app that I mentioned called Clear Fear, as well as a couple others I've been recommended, Virtual Hope Box, Headspace. Not necessarily a cure-all, but if they work for you, they can be really great. And finally, my Twitter handle, where you can reach me if you have any questions, or you can find me during the conference. In summary, networking should first and foremost be a way to make genuine and meaningful connections. Don't treat people like a resource, but as people. Build a support network and surround yourself with people who care for you. Think broader about what you can bring to professional relationships. And more importantly, introducing your friend to shit is not the end of the world. So you're about to all go to lunch, I think. So maybe listen, think about what you heard here today, and make a new friend. Thank you.
Hi friends, before we break for lunch, we have an update on the conference game, which hopefully you've all been able to check out. Richard just texted me the update of what's actually been happening. So apparently, the agents of the Dark Lord are on the move and claiming 5 points of region and a castle in Valeria. After a flurry of conquests, the humans control five points of regions with 1 castle. And for people who are worried and are starting to offer rewards in individual players controlling minor regions, deadline for this is 1:30 sharp. No queuing, no cut, that's the strict cutoff for it. So make sure that before lunch you actually come in and get the final points that you want to add. And also the hashtag is PvP19conquest. And there'll also be updates on Twitter. So, I'm going to break for lunch now, and we'll see you all back here at 1:45.